Picture a ballistic missile slamming into a runway in the Negev desert. It's not a near miss, it's a direct hit, punching a real crater into the pavement, the kind of impact that would register on seismometers miles away. To a satellite passing overhead an hour later, the base looks wounded, maybe finished. But within hours, not days, a jet is rolling over that same stretch of runway and lifting into the sky. This isn't a hypothetical. Versions of this exact scenario have already happened more than once at one specific Israeli airbase that has been hit by ballistic missiles in 3 separate rounds of conflict since 2024. And every time, the base has kept flying. Welcome back to Grand Structures. This is the engineering of Nevatim Airbase, and why trying to knock Israel's most important air installation out of the fight with ballistic missiles runs straight into a problem that isn't really about weapons at all. It's about infrastructure that's built to absorb a hit and keep functioning, rather than to never get hit in the first place. Here's the question this video actually answers. How do you protect a target that, by definition, cannot be hidden? You can bury a nuclear facility under 80 meters of granite. You cannot bury a runway. A modern airbase, Nevatim, covers roughly 50 square kilometers, with 4 runways sitting in flat, open desert, has to sit exposed on the surface of the Earth, visible to any satellite that passes overhead. So the engineering solution isn't concealment, it's resilience. Infrastructure designed not to prevent damage, but to isolate it, route around it, and repair it fast enough that the damage never translates into actually losing the ability to fly. Let's break down the systems that make that possible. First problem. A ballistic missile hitting a runway doesn't create a neat hole. The impact liquefies and displaces the ground beneath the surface, throws debris in every direction, and leaves a crater that historically has been the single most effective way to shut an airbase down. You don't need to destroy a single aircraft if the runway itself is unusable. This is exactly what's been tested at Nevatim. In October 2024, satellite imagery analyzed by independent researchers documented roughly 32 missile impacts on or near the base, and within a remarkably short window afterward, follow-up imagery showed the runway already patched and load-bearing again. The doctrine behind that kind of recovery is public, even if the exact procedures used at any specific base aren't. The U.S. Air Force's own Rapid Airfield Damage Repair, or RADR program, has demonstrated crews repairing around 18 craters in roughly 6.5 hours, using fast-setting flowable fill and rapid-curing concrete or polymer compounds instead of traditional concrete, which can take days to properly cure. That's not instant, but compared to historical crater repair timelines measured in days, it's transformative. The difference between an airbase that's down for a week and one that's flying again by the next mission cycle. The process itself follows a fairly consistent sequence across modern militaries. Mark the damage, remove the shattered pavement, backfill with rapid-setting material engineered to reach usable load-bearing strength far faster than ordinary concrete, and cap it to match the runway surface. Increasingly, Allied air forces are also testing robotic and autonomous systems to perform parts of this process, reducing the number of personnel who have to work exposed on a runway that may still be under threat. The base doesn't need to prevent every crater. It needs to treat a crater as a temporary repairable wound instead of a permanent kill. Second problem. Even if the runway survives, the aircraft sitting on the ground are extraordinarily vulnerable to a completely different kind of damage, the Shockwave itself. The F-35 is an advanced platform, but its radar-absorbent stealth coating is genuinely sensitive to physical stress, including the overpressure wave from a nearby blast. An ordinary hangar, really just a metal roof over an open floor, offers essentially no protection against that. That's why bases like Nevatim rely on hardened aircraft shelters, reinforced concrete structures, some dating back to around when Israel began receiving its F-35 fleet, purpose-built to withstand blast effects far better than a standard hangar. Satellite analysis after the October 2024 strike specifically noted several impacts landing near, and in at least one case, on these shelters, with only limited resulting damage reported, consistent with shelters designed to take a hit without a catastrophic loss of the aircraft inside. The general engineering principle behind shelters like this is well established in military construction. Rounded or angled roof geometry and layout spacing are designed to help redirect blast overpressure up and outward rather than concentrating it directly against a flat surface or door. The specific shelter geometry and spacing used at any individual base isn't something Israel publishes in detail for obvious reasons, but the underlying physics of shockwave deflection through shelter design is standard, publicly documented military engineering practice used across NATO and allied air bases.
Third problem, and it's one people rarely think about: fuel. A modern fighter fleet needs enormous quantities of highly flammable aviation fuel on hand at all times. Store that fuel in large above-ground tanks, and you've built the enemy a bonus target, one spark away from a catastrophic secondary explosion. That's why modern airbase fuel systems, including at major installations like Nevatim, are built primarily underground, distributed across buried pipeline networks rather than concentrated in a handful of exposed tanks. But burying the pipes only solves half the problem. If a buried line is severed, a fuel system without segmentation can lose its entire supply through one break. The standard engineering solution, used broadly across military and civilian fuel and pipeline infrastructure, is segmentation, dividing the network into isolated sections separated by valves that can close off a damaged segment, so the system loses fuel locally rather than draining the entire base's reserves. Modern systems increasingly pair this with automated pressure monitoring sensors that can detect a sudden pressure drop and trigger valve closure far faster than a human operator could react. The exact valve architecture and response times used at Nevatim specifically aren't public information, for reasons that should be obvious, but the underlying principle, segmented, pressure-monitored, largely buried fuel distribution, is standard practice for exactly the reason you'd expect. A single severed pipe should cost you a local repair, not your entire fuel reserve. Fourth problem: every base has to see and coordinate what's happening around it. Radar, communications, air traffic control. Historically, that meant a control tower, and a control tower is a single point of failure. Take out the tower, and in an older design, the base goes effectively blind. Modern air forces, including Israel's, have moved decisively away from that model toward hardened underground command facilities and, critically, networked sensor fusion. The F-35I Adir itself is built around this concept. Its sensor suite is designed to share data across other F-35s, other aircraft, and ground and sea-based systems in real time, meaning the loss of any single sensor node doesn't have to mean losing situational awareness across the whole force. The specific command and control architecture at any individual Israeli base is, again, not public information, but the broader shift away from a single visible tower and toward distributed, redundant, networked sensing is a well-documented direction in modern Air Force doctrine generally, and it's consistent with how Israel's broader integrated air and missile defense network is known to operate. Put these systems together, and here's what a real attack on a base like Nevatim has actually looked like, based on what's been documented. Missiles arrive, some intercepted, some getting through. Craters open on runways and taxiways, some buildings and occasionally aircraft shelters take direct or near-direct hits. Iranian state media claimed after the October 2024 strike that up to 20 F-35s had been destroyed, a claim Western and independent satellite analysts have not found supporting evidence for, with assessments pointing to limited damage concentrated in buildings and taxiway craters, and the runway itself repaired within days. That gap between the visual drama of a missile strike and the actual operational impact is the entire point of resilience-based engineering. The enemy gets the crater, the smoke, the satellite photo that looks like devastation. What they don't get, if the systems work as designed, is an airbase that's actually out of the fight. A crater looks like victory to whoever launched the missile, but on a base engineered for resilience rather than avoidance, that crater is closer to a scheduled maintenance problem than a strategic one. You can't make an open desert runway invisible. What you can do is make sure that hitting it costs the enemy a missile and costs you, a repair crew, a few hours of work. And that asymmetry, repeated attack after attack, is the entire engineering philosophy behind how Nevatim has kept operating through 3 rounds of direct missile strikes since 2024. Building resilient infrastructure is only half of this story, though. The other half is the machine that actually has to keep flying out of that base. In our next video, we go inside the F-35I Adir itself, the sensor fusion, the networked battle management systems, and how a single jet processes the data of an entire air force in real time. Subscribe to Grand Structures. Part 2 is coming.